Between a ton of new information for Wayfinder, the release date of Early Access, and an exclusive dev interview with PlayStation, there's a lot to talk about this week. So let's jump right into it. This is actually a new series that I want to begin doing each week, as I feel like a lot of the time, most of the smaller news gets missed. And I want to try to make sure that we have one place to cover it all. Of course, I'll still be doing breakdown videos of some of the bigger news that we get each week, but I feel like a lot of you guys just want the news summarized. Quick note, I will be missing this series next week unfortunately, as I'm moving into a new place, but I want to try to keep this series as weekly as possible. So let's dive right in. Last Thursday, Wayfinder received a ton of news regarding the early access launch date, founders packs, housing, and the reveal of Venomous. To start, it was announced that Wayfinder was releasing early access to PS4, PS5, and PC on August 15th. You have the choice to buy a selection of founders packs between $20, $50, $90, and $150 US. In case you're curious about what is in each of these packs, I created a video talking about everything you need to know about the founders packs, so be sure to click the video in the description to check that out. There will be 2 Founders seasons, each about 3 months long, which means yes, that we will end up seeing a free-to-play launch happen sometime in early 2024. The game will feature cross-play and cross-progression, but will not feature cross-buy. So if you buy Rune Silver on the PlayStation, that currency will not be available for you if you log into the game on PC. However, if you buy something with that currency, that item will be shared across your account no matter what system you're playing on. Another quick note for my PlayStation players, per Sony guidelines, you will unfortunately need a subscription to PlayStation Plus for early access, but that requirement will no longer be needed when the game launches to free to play. Alright, so let's move on to our first topic of housing, because they did drop a few hints as to what we can look forward to as the game progresses in development. First off, they talked about how the apartment will be your first house that you can unlock, and it will exist within the inn. It does look like we will have complete control over decoration and placement, and your only limit is the size of the space in which you're building. I saw a ton of people during the stream compare this feature to WildStar, if you guys remember that one, so that makes me super excited about the future of housing. Speaking of which, they spoke about how later on we will begin to see full houses with neighborhoods, neighborhood events, and more, potentially even adding guild-based neighborhoods. There was a lot more information about housing and neighborhoods, which I plan to cover in a future video, so be sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're enjoying the video so far or you're excited for Wayfinder, hit the like button as well. Let's transition now over to pets and mounts. As we know from one of the tiers in the Founders Pack, mounts will be making their way to the game. Of course that won't come right away, but it is something to look forward to. Likewise can be said about pets, but the only difference being that pets will be available for the game starting at early access launch, but kind of serve as a stationary decoration. They spoke about adding an animation to pet your pet, but that will come at a later time. Also, it is likely to see an evolution where the pet will start following you around your home, and eventually might even follow you outside. But if we shift gears back to mounts, they did tease for a second that we might see a preview zone of sorts where you can test out your mount, and I would imagine that would be the first phase of getting mounts into the game, or they might start with that and eventually transition into a mount anywhere type system. Here's a couple of small details that you may have missed before we move on to the dev interview with PlayStation. Dyes will be coming to weapons. If you didn't already know, dyes are in the game to customize your Wayfinder currently, but they are not currently set for weapon customization. Events will likely be making their way into the game as well. They haven't said specific themes or types of events, but I imagine we might see something like a fall or Halloween type event, maybe a holiday event, or potentially something related to the lore. I always love these type of events because it gives you even more of a reason to dive into the game and grind out rewards. Another detail is that feature upvotes are a huge idea that they emphasized. The devs have stated that they want your feedback on the game, and they will be taking heavy consideration of what the community wants as a whole, so if you want your voice heard, definitely leave a comment down below. The Airship Syndicate team will also be at Gamescom in Europe, which takes place near the end of August, as well as an off-site meet and greet during PAX West during the first week of September. So if you're already in the area or planning on attending either of these events, definitely be on the lookout for the team. Let's close out this week's news with an interview that almost went completely over my head. The PlayStation blog interviewed comic artist and creative director Joe Madureira, who I apologize for probably completely butchering your last name, about everything that went into creating the Wayfinders that we know today. When asked about how characters are first designed, Joe mentions that at times the decision to create a character comes from gameplay, but other times, and he uses Venomous as an example, they just brainstorm characters and ask themselves, quote, wouldn't it be cool to have a character who was some sort of poisoner? Do we have a character that does damage over time? So really, it just kind of depends on the situation as to what characters get created. He was also asked about the current character approach versus a traditional custom-made RPG character, Obviously there's a lot of controversy as to why there is a preset character versus kind of a custom-made RPG character, especially in MMOs, but he mentioned that the more that they design for the archetypes like a rogue or warrior, they actually just ended up making the characters themselves. So the example he gave was they were working on a rogue and they just really ended up making Silo. So here's kind of the dev art too to go alongside that point. More importantly, he spoke about how leaning into their strengths as a studio was extremely necessary, and they felt that bringing in characters with their own unique backstories was a lot more fulfilling than having an archetype that was just a blank slate. To summarize the end of the interview, he stated that he is extremely proud in the individual stories of each of the characters, where they are all entirely personalized for the Wayfinder that you are playing. To which he expanded on, mentioning the discovery system, where if you visit different locations or interact with certain objects, you get even more lore and rewards as you discover them. And with the more discoveries that you make, the more you progress in the character's personalized questline. This was a great interview and it was really informative, so I definitely recommend reading it yourself if you're at all interested. I'll leave a link to the article down below. But that is all the news I currently have to cover. Again, if you're excited for Wayfinder or just interested in gaming news in general, leave a like and subscribe. Until the next video, I will catch you all later.